Happy Thursday, everybody, especially to you UK viewers. You have been waiting for a show in a decent time frame that you guys could join in, so this is for you. We have a very special show today with two very knowledgeable scientists that are going to be talking about the cosmos, which is, I know that everybody out there knows that I'm obsessed with. So I told them earlier that I'm going to try my best to follow along, even though there'll probably be some words that fly straight over my head. You will see me smiling and nodding like I understand, but inside I will be feeling like I'm lost. So just bear with Steve. He'll be guiding the conversation today. He'll be taking that kind of aspect, and I'm going to do what I can. If you guys want to follow along on Twitter with us, you can send us a question towards the end. We'll try to fit that in if we have time. That's at NonSec Show. That's NonSeq Show. You can also do the same on our Discord server. The link for that would be in the description. Tomorrow we have a debate between Dr. Joshua Bowen and Rob Rowe from Sentinel Apologetics. That will be on the flood. Did it happen? Was it global? Was it local? We'll be getting to that tomorrow at 8:30. And I'm going to leave it there for now so that we can jump right into the discussion today. And I'm going to let Steve introduce these two fine gentlemen that we have with us.
Hey, welcome, buddy. I've been really looking forward to this particular day. I have had multiple discussions with Dr. Ross before, but this is the first time we're going to bring him into an actual discussion with somebody of equal caliber on the subject of Big Bang and cosmology and things of that nature. So with us today, we have Dr. Hugh Ross. He is the founder and president of Reasons to Believe. He has written numerous books. Improbable Planet, which we did a review of on my channel several months ago. He also wrote The Creator and the Cosmos, which I have here. Link is in the video description as well. We also have Dr. Felipe Goicovic. Got that right, I think, right? Goicovic?
Goicovic.
Awesome. And he is actually, I believe, a double degree PhD?
Yeah, double degree.
Pontificia Universidad?
Pontificia.
Pontificia. Universidad.
Pontificia.
Pontificia. I'm gonna stick with English for this.
We'll get there, bear with us.
You can skip that word.
And you do your postdoctoral research in Heidelberg Institute for Theoretical Studies. Is that correct?
Excellent. Yes.
Awesome.
HITS for short.
HITS, HITS for short, right?
Yeah.
That I can follow.
Yeah, see, we like abbreviations. We like simple words. Monosyllabic is just fine. So we're gonna dive right into it. I have some questions that we've gotten from like Reasons to Believe and some of the audience members and ourselves. I think, though, because of the depth of this discussion, we kind of just focus on like the biblical aspect of the Big Bang. So what I'd like for you two gentlemen to do is kind of initially give us an idea of what the Big Bang is, how the different types of models fit into the Big Bang, because I think it's more of a collection of a thing. And then we can go right into how that relates to the Bible. And I'll start with Dr. Ross. Dr. Ross, do you want to tell us a little bit about what the Big Bang actually means and what some misconceptions people might have of it?
Yeah, sure. And you're correct. There's a family of Big Bang models. There isn't just one. There are literally dozens of different Big Bang creation models. But what they all have in common is that the universe has a beginning in finite time, and it's a universe that gets colder and colder as it gets older and older. And it's a universe that expands from a space-time beginning and expands under laws of physics that don't change.
And all the models have certain things in common, correct?
Well, they have those things in common.
Yeah, those things in common, okay.
They're differences.
And Dr. Felipe, do you want to add anything about that, as far as what the Big Bang actual theory entails?
I just want to start with sometimes I think we should be careful with the language and not use creation, because in science we don't use that word. So yeah, basically what he said is a collection of different models, but what they have in common is that the universe started with a very hot, dense state, and then rapidly expand to form the universe that we observe today. That's always the common ground of the Big Bang. You have, of course, on top of that, several models of different things that entail, for example, the nature of dark matter, and actually if it is cold or warm or hot, or the different inflation models and so on and so forth. But yeah, I think we are fine with background.
And do you want to jump right into it, Dr. Ross, of what the topic's going to be tonight as far as the argument that the Bible somehow relates to the Big Bang, or the Big Bang was predicted or explained somehow into the Bible?
Yeah, well, I was not raised in a Christian home, and I picked up a Gideon Bible at age 17 and began to go through it, and was rather surprised as a young astronomy student that it had predicted the fundamentals of what we call Big Bang cosmology. In particular, it talks about four things. The universe has a beginning. That includes the beginning of space and time. That the universe expands from that beginning, expands under laws of physics that don't change, and one of those laws is a pervasive law of decay. And even with high school physics, if you've got a system that's expanding under laws that don't change, or one of those laws is pervasive law of decay, that's a universe that must get colder and colder in a highly predictable way. And so seeing that in the Bible actually had a big impact on me in persuading me that the Bible had predictive power. And actually led me on a search to see where else does the Bible accurately predict future scientific discoveries. And I found literally hundreds of different examples where that was the case. And that's really what brought me into the Christian faith.
And Dr. Goicovic, you want to go ahead and respond to that on how you relate or not relate the Big Bang to the Bible?
Yeah, I wouldn't do it, because in science we care about what we can observe and what we can test, we can predict using several models. And well, I don't have a problem with people believing whatever they want, but I do have a problem when you say things like the Bible predicted it, because it certainly it's not true. Because from the first sentence, the Bible got it wrong. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, and that's not a Big Bang.
It is a Big Bang.
The heavens and the earth. I think that you can understand earth. You cannot understand it different than the earth itself.
I see where you're going. You need to understand that in biblical Hebrew, there is no word for universe, but they got this phrase, the Shamayana res, with the definite articles. It's used 9 times in the Old Testament, and it always refers to the totality of physical reality. So Genesis 1:1 is saying that there was a beginning where God brought into existence matter, energy, space, and time. It's not making a distinction between planet Earth and universe. It's an idiomatic phrase that means literally the entire universe.
At least from my perspective, that's an ad hoc assignation of the concepts, because now we know that there was a Big Bang, and you want to say now, okay, the Bible predicted it, but the same is true for every other religion. They all have the myth of creation. And what's the difference between the Bible and the Quran and so on and so forth?
The difference is the Bible got it right. The other books got it wrong.
Well, I'm sure a Muslim will disagree with that. So what's the fundamental difference between your book and any other sacred book?
Well, the Quran is a little bit different in that what you have in Islam is basically a Christian cult. They take the Old and New Testament and they add a latter-day book written by a latter-day prophet. It's a lot like Mormonism. And so both Mormonism and Islam have elements of the biblical theology built into it, because both are founded in the Old and New Testament. So I'm not critiquing what the Muslims believe about the Old and New Testament, but what is in the Quran. I studied the Quran and found many places where it got the science wrong and it got the history wrong. And I said, this wouldn't be something I'd expect from the one that actually created the entire universe. But I spent 18 months looking for a provable error in history or science in the Bible, wasn't able to find one. And I noticed you made the comment that you think it's hindsight. I find it interesting that Jewish theologians living 800, 900, even 1100 years ago, and looking at the Old Testament, saw the elements of Big Bang cosmology, and they wrote about it. They talked about how Genesis 1:1 is actually talking about the entire universe having a beginning in finite time. It includes matter, energy, space, and time. So it's not just me reading into it from a 21st century perspective. Theologians centuries ago drew the same conclusion.
Well, yeah, I'm sure it's not you personally that are making this association, but I think that something we have to put it very clearly is that when any scientist involved, for example, with the postulation of all of the Big Bang models, never look at the Bible or the Quran or any. They look at the evidence at the observations available or new observations, depending on what they were using. But nobody started from a religious book to advance our knowledge and say, okay, the Bible is saying this. Let's go and so sorry, Steve. There's something wrong with my audio.
No. Dr. Ross has a minor hiss, but we're trying to correct for it. But if you happen to have like a Dolby compression on your mic, Dr. Ross, or something like those lines, you might want to remove it because you're getting a little bit of hiss when you're talking. It's not unintelligible, but it is.
I'll get closer to the.
That works actually a little bit better too.
Okay, that's
great. Very awesome. Much
Sorry
better. Thank
about
you.
that. Yeah, and Felipe, I didn't come from a Christian perspective. I mean, I was exposed to the astronomy before I picked up the Bible. And I remember, I mean, I'm a lot older than you are. When I was looking at the Bible, I was saying, gee, it looks like it's consistent with Big Bang cosmology. I wonder if Big Bang cosmology is going to stand up, or maybe one of the competing models. So I was open to the idea that cosmology might actually prove the Bible wrong. But I think, as you're aware, as you go from the 60s to the 70s and the 80s, it became quite clear of all the competing models for the universe, the Big Bang was winning. So when I saw the Big Bang winning, that confirmed to me, yes, the Bible really did get the cosmology right. But I was open to the fact that I could be wrong, and the Bible might be wrong. It might prove to be steady state, or hesitating universe, or an eternal universe.
Yeah, but what do you mean by? I forgot what the concept that you just said. Let's start again. So, sometimes my English can fail, so I apologize for that.
No problem. Trust me, you don't want me speaking Spanish right now, though.
My English fails, and I speak English. That's the only language that I know. So
yeah, unless you want me to say I have a cat in my shoe, you don't want me to speak Spanish.
I completely lost my train of thought. So
it's okay. Steve will get us.
Well, yeah. Let me ask you guys this. I'm not insinuating there's a post hoc analysis, but since it was brought up, when you're looking at something like the Bible and the stretching forth of the heavens, and of course the Big Bang model is that, of course, there's a universal inflation. There's also the inflation period before that. The Big Bang has different epochs of expansion, but the acceleration, for example, like with dark energy. Dr. Ross, you seem to imply that somehow actually is incorporated into the biblical narrative, even though that expansion has only recently been discovered in the last, a couple decades, right?
No, I wouldn't take it that far. There are 11 texts in the Bible that talk about the expansion of the universe, but it doesn't really give us any details on the character of the expansion. It just makes the point that the universe has been continuously expanding since the cosmic creation event. So I think it'd be a mistake to read the cosmic inflation event into the biblical text. I actually know people who do that, and I said, no, I think you're reading way too much into those biblical texts. It's simply talking about how throughout the universe's history, it's been undergoing expansion. And it's up to us astronomers to figure out the details of what that expansion is like. But I am impressed with the fact that no astronomer even thought about the idea of an expanding universe until the 20th century, and yet we find this concept of cosmic expansion in the oldest book of the Bible. I mean, even the book of Job speaks about the expansion of the universe.
Dr. Felipe, Mr. Goicovic, do you want to address that a little bit?
You can call me Felipe. It's fine.
Felipe, okay. Do you want to kind of address that? I mean, obviously, you're taking the position that the Bible doesn't, just because it says that they're stretching forth of heavens, that's really kind of reading into it, right? That after the fact, okay.
Yeah, well, of course. For me, it's nothing more than after the fact saying, this coincides with what the Bible says. But of course, that's not really. It's not useful scientifically because we cannot derive any useful information from these sacred textbooks that we can use to advance our knowledge, for example, in cosmology or any other subject, biology or whatever. So even if the Bible was correct in saying, okay, there was an expansion of the universe, so what? It's not like we use that to produce the models that we have today.
Well, we do in one sense, and the Bible tells us that the laws of physics don't change over the history of the universe, which actually gives us a basis for doing science. It means that we can actually trust our measurements to give us reliable information.
I don't remember any part of the Bible saying that the laws of physics don't change.
Well, Jeremiah 33, Romans 8, Genesis 1 and 3, Revelation.
It says explicitly the laws of physics don't change.
Okay. Well, I'll take you to one text. Jeremiah 33 is where God is talking to the Jews and saying, you change your mind all the time about who I am, but I'm a God that doesn't change. I'm immutable. As proof that I don't change, look at the laws that govern the heavens and the earth that I created. As they don't change, I don't change. Or what you see in Romans 8, where it talks about this pervasive law of decay and makes the point that the entire universe has always been subject to this pervasive law of decay. Or what you see in Romans 8:23, where it talks about how these laws of physics will remain in effect until the full number of human beings that God intends to redeem have been redeemed. And what you see in Revelation 21, that the laws of physics are in place as a tool in God's hand to permanently eliminate evil. And once evil has been eliminated, then those laws will be replaced. But what it tells us physicists is that as we look at the universe, we can count on the fact that the universe we see today is governed by the same laws that we see when we look at, say, galaxies 12 billion light years away. And likewise, we're not anticipating that if we go to different locations, we're going to see different physics. And so this actually gives us a basis for doing science. We can trust what we're seeing through the record of nature. And that's actually a biblical concept. We're told to study the book of nature that will reveal truth. And so I say it's no accident that the scientific revolution exploded out of the Reformation. Because when people began to look at the Bible, they saw these biblical principles and said, aha, now we've got a basis for doing scientific research.
Does not the uniformity of nature apply to both the paradigms? I mean, from the biblical perspective, there's a uniform of nature that the laws of physics are going to be constant, that they're not going to all of a sudden change or not be what they were before, except maybe when you're talking about the Planck scale or something like that. But generally speaking, we know enough about science that the sun is going to rise tomorrow. We can say the uniformity of that. Does that apply to this methodological naturalism or even ontological naturalism approach as well in Felipe's position?
Sure, but I would argue that's been borrowed from the biblical perspective.
Felipe, you want to address that? Because I mean, the question I asked is that the uniform of nature seems to apply to both of you and to Hugh. So I don't know why it would lend credence any more or validity to either one hypothesis over the other.
Well, I'll give you an example. Hinduism, for example, talks about how we're not going to be able to trust the laws of physics to reveal truth. There's going to be an inconsistency. It's Christianity has always taught, no, that's not true. You can trust what you see in the record of nature. It will reveal truth. And so that's what really motivated the launch of modern science.
So you're saying that science, that the Christianity approach for the uniform of nature is at least in line with what we'd see with science, as opposed to some other religions. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Let's see here. we talked a little about the Big Bang model. There are some theories actually before the Big Bang model. Do you guys want to address those a little bit and how those precursors were kind of put to the wayside? And can you relate that also to a biblical perspective and how that if we thought of something before like Hoyle's steady state, why we don't think that way now? And did the Bible predict either one of them? I mean, did it say that back then, if we would have just had to the steady state theory and the Bible says, you know, it's stretching for the heavens, did it still fit that paradigm?
Well, it's an interesting question because, you know, I was studying astronomy since I was 7 and then began to look at the Bible at age 17. And I was wondering, you know, I wonder how the Bible is going to fare with this advance of cosmology. And I remember reading the books by Fred Hoyle. And what I found interesting is that Fred Hoyle actually launched his steady state theory from his angst about the Christian faith. He did not like Christianity. He did not like this idea that the universe had a beginning, implying a God before the beginning. So he said, it's from my philosophical bias that I'm proposing this steady state theory. You actually read the paper that he first published in 1948. The initial paragraph basically says, this is the reason why I'm proposing the theory. It had nothing to do with science. It was all about his opposition to Christianity. And so I said, oh, it's interesting to hear how in cosmology, science and theology are actually coming together. Or as the famous Chinese astrophysicist Fang Weiji said, is that no longer is cosmology the exclusive turf of theologians. We now have a physics where we can explore the creation of the universe. And so as an atheist, he was talking about how isn't it interesting that in the 21st century, we're seeing this coming together of theology and astrophysics.
Dr. Felipe?
Yeah, actually, I was thinking something now. The Big Bang theory, like in practice, is not really saying the beginning of the universe. The Big Bang theory is basically the expansion from a very dense and hot state. But we cannot go further towards t equals 0 because we have this barrier that is called the Planck time, because there the physics that we know of breaks down. So what if we will, let's say in 10 years, we have a new development and we find out that the universe didn't have a beginning. It was eternal. But the universe that we see now, today, it was the result of something that happened that, well, expanded. And well, are you going to say that your Bible got it right or not?
Well, the Bible is quite explicit that the universe has a beginning, that it has a space-time beginning. So if science were to advance to prove that incorrect, that would be at least corrosive, if not catastrophic, to the Christian faith. But so far, all the observational evidence sustains that the Bible got it right. And yeah, I mean, you're studying black holes. I find it interesting that it's through black holes we actually have a possibility of being able to probe what's going on in the Planck era. And so I'm looking forward to maybe we can actually find a neutron star that has a close orbit around a black hole, and that's going to tell us things about what's going on in the quantum gravity era. However, no matter what, we're not going to be able to get all the way back to t equals 0. We can probe it, I think. We have those possibilities. But I think it's true of anything in science. You're never going to be able to exhaust all possible knowledge of the system. But I think what you want to do is develop your philosophical perspectives on what you know and the trend line. So I kind of react to people say, you know what, I'm going to hang on to my atheism until we know everything. But we're never going to know everything. What we want to do is kind of develop our worldview on the trend. The more we learn about the universe, is it giving us more evidence that there's a God behind it all, it's designed it for a specific benefit, or is the evidence shrinking? If you could show me that the evidence is shrinking as we learn more and more through our experiments or observations, that would deeply shaken my faith in Jesus Christ and the Bible. But so far, all I've seen is the biblical principle that the more we learn about the universe, the more evidence we find for the supernatural handiwork of God.
Is that something we should note, though, that the Big Bang is not about cosmogony? It's not about the origin or if the universe had a beginning. As you said, Hoyle was not a fan of theology or Christianity, especially. He believed the steady state, and that would be a model that did not have a quote origin, right, or a quote beginning. Right. So that whole thing about having a beginning is kind of bogged down in more philosophy than it is science of what it actually means to have a beginning or Aristotelian causes. But would you agree, though, from at least after Planck's time, we have a very good model of how the universe progressed from that particular time, 10 to the negative 43 seconds, to our modern universe. We know pretty much what happened in that period, correct?
We do, except we're still trying to figure out exactly what kind of inflation happened at 10 to the minus 35 seconds.
And that was a very, very brief period of time, correct?
Yeah, but I think we're persuaded that there really was an inflation event. It'd be really fun to find out exactly what kind of inflation event.
Dr. Felipe, I have kind of a question that stems off of that. When we're talking about the Big Bang, let's go. What are the theories behind how that happened? Like how we came. I hate to use this phrase because I know that it brings up some different points of view, but like with Lawrence Krauss and his something from nothing, what are our models on that? Like, what are the different ideas or theories about how something can come from nothing?
Well, you always have to ask, what kind of nothing are you talking about?
Well, you know what? Let's discuss both. Right now, how about we stick with like a scientific nothing, like Lawrence Krauss's nothing when he's talking about nothing being something as far as quantum fluctuations, not philosophical ex nihilo, which we'll get into a little bit maybe afterwards. But
that's why I hesitated to say that. I knew that as soon as the something from nothing came out that it causes this. But I kind of want to take a more simple approach to it. We don't have to get in bogged down with the terminology. But if you had to explain what the certain theories are out there, Dr. Felipe, how did that happen? The Big Bang.
Well, I'm certain no expert on this, but yeah, I think the prevailing hypothesis is that these quantum fluctuations in the nothingness of having absence of space and time created like this state of the universe in which expanded. But it's nothing because it's from nothing because it doesn't violate the energy conservation laws because you can have something that has for example, kinetic energy equals to the potential energy. So you have total energy equals 0. So you can have those things not violating any physics law. Yeah, I think that's the prevailing hypothesis, but all of these things are in the realm of, let's say, speculation because we don't have still the mathematical and physical models to probe those regimes that are beyond the physics that we currently have, which is basically quantum mechanics and gravity. Those two things are apparently not wanted to mix at certain scales, and because we have this limitation, we cannot go beyond this barrier of the Planck time. So anything beyond that is certainly speculation. And if you want to come up with something and be taken seriously, you need to produce a model that can have predictions that we can test. And for example, maybe in the future, now with the gravitational waves observatories that are being developed, we can maybe probe some regimes that we are able now with, for example, optical observatories. And maybe we can go a little further in our knowledge. But right now, everything that you say beyond the physics that we have is pure speculation.
Dr. Ross, you would agree, because you wrote in your book that we pretty much do have a good understanding of the total net energy, and that local geometry is pretty well flat. I mean, like this, like 6 sigma or something like that. So that much we of the model would it be safe to say it's confirmed for the most part that the total net energy is 0? So therefore, there is no violation of mass or energy, and things could have come from some kind of metastable false vacuum quantum fluctuations. Is that possible?
You'll see in our reasons.org website a review I wrote of Lawrence Krauss's book, A Universe from Nothing. And I read through the book, and I found that he talked about actually 9 different kinds of nothing. Mm-hmm. But every one of his nothings was actually something.
Well, yeah, but the chapter of his book is called, one of, I think it's in chapter 9, is something is or nothing is something. He makes it very clear that even when his use of the word nothing, he is talking about something, correct?
He is talking about something. But it's confusing for the layperson because he's changing his definition of nothing.
This is true. Yeah, nobody's going to argue with that. It is very confusing to people.
And he talks about this net energy balance, but that's not really nothing either. Right. I mean, for example, I could have a zero balance in my bank account, but be the fact that I owe $100, I have $100. I add the two together, they come to zero. But the 100 I owe is something. The 100 I have is also something. And so you talked about kinetic and potential energy. Yeah, you can work it out so that they come out to zero, but you still have potential energy, kinetic energy.
Well, let's change it up a little bit. Let's talk about philosophical nothing then, because you're right. As soon as you have some kind of property, you have something. Well, it ties in. For example, there's an old adage like something from nothing can only come from nothing, which I disagree with. I think that there's nothing illogical about something coming from nothing. It's just counterintuitive, but there's nothing illogical about it. So when we're talking about an ex nihilo approach from like the biblical point of view, would you say that, and I'm not advocating this is what happened, but would you say it's logical or illogical to say that something can come from a philosophical ex nihilo when you don't want to have like some kind of reification fallacy where you're treating nothing as something? So if you have absolutely nothing, no properties, no laws, nothing to prevent something from happening, nothing to cause something from happening, is there anything illogical about saying something can come from nothing?
Well, Christianity is founded on this idea of creation ex nihilo, but you need to carefully define what that means. And the passage that probably defines it most explicitly is Hebrews 11:3. The universe that we can detect did not come from that which we can detect. And the passages make it clear that God is the agency of bringing his universe as something out of nothing. And the biblical definition of nothing is that which has no matter, no energy, no space, and no time. So that's very different from the nothings that Lawrence Krauss is speaking about.
Sure.
Because all of his nothings involve some aspect of space and time. But given that the Bible speaks about the angelic realm, which is totally independent of matter, energy, space, and time, it's theologically open to speculation about exactly what is that which we cannot detect. But that's all the Bible is saying. The universe that we can detect did not come from that which we can detect, and it was God's agency that brought it about. So in that sense, there's also quite a broad spectrum of creation ex nihilo models within Christian theology. And, I think we would agree that we're not in a position to explore that because of the fact that we're constrained to the space-time dimensions of the universe. We really can't do scientific experiments to see what's going on beyond the realm that we can detect.
Felipe, you want to kind of address that as well? Do you think it's at least not illogical to say something can come from nothing, even though we probably have no idea if nothing can even exist? That state of whatever it is, nobody's ever discovered it. Nobody's ever experimented with it. Nobody has any idea if that is even possible. In your studies, has there been any research into the possibility even of absolute nothing?
No, well, my field of research is slightly different, and I study things that are inside the universe, and nothing relates to the Big Bang. So.
Why do we just have nothing mean nothing? Like, why do we have
Did
to?
you say
Why can't nothing just mean nothing? Like, can we go back to a simpler time when words actually mean what they say and not have 9 different meanings, like Dr. Ross said?
I just want to say
that's what confuses people.
Can I say something? Yeah, just the idea I had, because he said things that we cannot detect, and I would add yet, because we don't know what we are going to be able to detect in the future. For example, with gravitational waves, this is something that is being developed right now. That is something that we already proved that we can do. That is detect these gravitational waves, and maybe we can probe some things that we couldn't probe before. So saying that we are never going to be able to probe beyond what we know now, is probably not correct. Actually, we will continue developing new models.
We can detect that which exists within matter, energy, space, and time. There is no possibility we can detect that which exists beyond matter, energy, space.
How do you know that? Well, how do you know that?
I think he's saying so. Gravitational waves can only take. I mean, granted, we only used to be able to go back optically to the recombination period, right? But now with the gravitational waves, you think we could probably peer back even closer to the time equals zero. But Dr. Ross, are you saying that even if we peer back that far, there's nothing that we could peer back to anything? And I hate to use the word prior to that because it's kind of a nonsensical thing. But anything that's quote unquote outside space time. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, are you looking at it more from what's called a theistic personalism, where God is like the merge of the universe and he is like the caretaker? Or are you looking at it as everything is God and God is one with the universe and he's somehow in the universe itself? How do you look at the position of God in relationship to some kind of space-time manifold?
Well, I'm simply making the point that in everything in science tells us this, that we're constrained in our powers of observation to the space-time continuum of the universe. That's actually a principle of general relativity. We're not going to be able to make observations beyond that space-time realm. And that's what Hebrews is referring to when it says the universe that we can detect did not come from that which we can detect. And that's not the only biblical text. There are other biblical texts too that talk about reality beyond space and time. But to answer your question, what's unique about the Christian faith is it talks about God being both transcendent and immanent. So, for example, in Islam, you have a transcendent God, but not an immanent God. In Hinduism, you got an immanent God, but not a transcendent God. In Christianity, God is simultaneously both. And what I mean about the immanence of God is that God fills the entirety of his creation. He operates everywhere within his creation. But he's in no way limited by his creation. He's transcendent. He's totally free to operate any way he wants beyond anything that he has created. So he's simultaneously transcendent and immanent. And this is something that is not possible for us humans to visualize. That's one thing that attracted me to the Christian faith. It's the only religion based on a holy book that transcends the limitations of human visualization. It's the only holy book that speaks of God as being a triune being. It's the only holy book that talks about the simultaneity of human free will and divine predestination. And that was a piece of evidence for me. This book must come from a mind that transcends the universe, because it doesn't betray the limitations of a mind that's constrained by the space-time dimensions of the universe.
Well, Felipe, do you want to answer to that as far as transcendental approach? I mean, is not in some way the Big Bang a transcendental thing? I mean, in some regard?
Well, the point of starting of existence of the universe, yes, that's something that is transcendental in the sense that it's outside our time space. But yeah, well, the theory of the Big Bang does not go up to that point. The Big Bang only refers to the period of rapid expansion from this point. I just wanted to point out that making assertions of this nature, saying this, that God is transcendental in the Bible, that proves that the Bible was correct. It's for me, it doesn't make any sense, because we don't know the nature of the things beyond that. So that's making just assertions because you are starting from your conclusion, that is that the Bible is correct.
Yeah, no, what I was trying to say, Felipe, is when you look at, say, the Hindu Vedas or the Quran or the Mormon text, or what you see in Baha'i, what you see as a theology that can be visualized and conceived from humans constrained in the universe. What I saw in the Bible were doctrines that transcended the limitations of human visualization, which at least for me opened up the possibility this book could actually be inspired by one that transcends the universe, because it doesn't betray these human limitations. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
So when it comes to the transcendental thing and the outside of space-time, where do you guys stand on the multiverse then? Because obviously that would kind of entails something that's outside of what we would be considered space-time in this particular universe? Or do you consider this particular universe part of some larger universe, and that each pocket or bubble in that universe has its own particular properties, each particular fine-tuning, each particular constants? Where would we fit in to that multiverse, and would that be even something even more transcendental than what we have in our space-time here? Hugh, you can go first on that.
Okay, sure. Well, it's interesting that the multiverse wasn't invented back in the 1990s. It actually goes back to the Middle Ages. It was Christian theologians that made the point nothing less than an infinite universe would befit an infinite God. So I find it rather ironic that you've got atheistic physicists borrowing a Christian principle. And I think we would all agree that the universe is a lot bigger than what we see. I mean, because what we see is the universe of the past. And so, and it's an expanding universe. So the universe of the present must be bigger than the universe we see. How much bigger, we don't know. And that's where you've got a lot of different models. Some say that it's finite. Others say that it's infinite. Others would claim that there's many space-time realms. Some say there's an infinite number of space-time realms. So I think it's important to explain to lay people there's not just one multiverse model. There's many different multiverse models. What kind of model are you talking about? But what I see happening philosophically, and I actually predicted this back in the 1980s, that eventually the fine-tuning argument, this idea that the universe is fine-tuned for the specific benefit of human beings, would become so pervasive and powerful that atheists would have nowhere else to go but to hypothesize an infinite number of universes, all with different characteristics, and claim our universe by pure chance had the characteristics that allows us to exist and thrive here on Earth. And indeed, I waited about 15 years, and that's exactly what happened.
Felipe, I want to address that in twofold. One, your opinion on the multiverse, and especially I'm kind of curious of the whole randomness or stochastic approach to the universe existing. Is that something that's ubiquitous in your studies, that you think that the universe came about strictly by random or stochastic processes, which obviously quantum fluctuations would be, or do you think that there's something more driving for that, something more deterministic?
Yeah, well, regarding can you hear me right?
Because absolutely.
Okay, because I had some weird things happening. First, I find the idea of multiverse very fun, of course, and it's very parallel with the argument of saying that the Earth is perfect for us, and hence it must be created just for us. And you can say, but there's essentially infinite number of planets with infinite number of combinations of environments. And of course, the one that is perfect for life, like the one we know, it's the one that has life. So it's the same argument for the multiverses, and of course, it's something that is still in the realm of speculation. I found actually pretty fun idea to play with, but of course, it's not yet. It's just a hypothesis. And in regards of the second things you said. It's not something that really it worries people in the astrophysics community, because we work with what we have, and what we have is this universe. So it's not like we are worried to but I cannot study the universe, let's say black holes, if I don't know if this universe came from pure random processes or if it's one of infinite number of multiverses or so on. So. Yeah, it's not something really, really going ubiquitous in the community.
Do you want to add on anything to that real quick? And we probably have a lot of people that want to ask some questions. So we're going to be starting maybe Q&A here soon. So if you want to have some questions, a couple of ways you can send to us. One, via the Twitter on NonSec, and the other way would be through our live feed. I'm watching the live feed. I think, Kyle, you can maybe check out the Twitter, and if you guys want to start sending us questions. But Kyle, you had some questions of your own.
I've been following
too, right?
along. Yes, I just have one question, and I'm not sure if it's if it would fit into it's just something I'm curious about, Dr. Ross, because it came up the other day in a conversation that we were having with another guest. And since you study the universe and that's kind of your thing, first of all, let me ask you this. Do you believe that there may be life elsewhere on another planet? And if so, how would that play into the Bible aspect, since it doesn't mention, any talk of that? If we were to find, I'm not talking about like, intelligent life like this, but just life in general, whether it be biological or bacteria even, how would that kind of play into the Bible then?
Well, for at least 2,000 years, Christians have debated this point. And you've got theologians on both sides, those who say that Earth is the only place that has life, and those who say that God enjoys creating so much, he's going to fill the universe with life. And then you've got people all the way in between. About the only biblical text that gives you any constraint on this is what you see in Hebrews 9 and 10, where it talks about the creator of the universe coming to Earth, dying one time, one place for all. Which may imply that Earth is the only place that has intelligent life, that's spiritual, that is in need of being redeemed from their evil behavior. But that leaves open the possibility that God could create dolphins on another planet, or put grass on another planet, or algae on another planet. And I've been on public record since the early 1980s. We will find the remains of life on virtually every solar system body, for the simple fact that Earth has been so prolific with life for so long that meteorites have exported the remains of Earth life throughout the solar system, and have written articles to the effect that the best place to find that is on the moon. In fact, 3 of my astronomy friends have calculated that there's about 20,000 kilograms of Earth's soil on every 100 square kilometers of the moon's surface. And therefore, we should really think seriously about going to the moon to recover some of that Earth soil, because that's really our only shot to find the fossils of Earth's first life. Earth's geology has destroyed those fossils, but the moon has very little geological activity. And so we got a really good chance of finding pristine fossils of Earth's first life on the moon. Now, we could also find them on Mars. When you go to Mars, it's no longer 20,000 kilograms. You're now down to 200 kilograms. So it's going to be much more difficult to try to find it on Mars than on the moon. And personally, I'm excited because theists and non-theists have very different models of what Earth's first life should look like. And so I got to speak at NASA Houston saying, you need to think about going back to the moon with a different mission. Because if you could actually see who was right, the theists or the non-theists, about Earth's first life, every taxpayer is going to be excited about that. Because the last time I checked, 100% of the U.S. taxpayer base is either a theist or a non-theist.
That is, I have never heard that before, and that is fascinating to me. Like I said earlier, I'm obsessed with space, and the fact that that might be a possibility on the moon is incredible. Felipe, what are your thoughts on that?
This is the first time that I've heard this as well.
Well, it's in the published literature, and I've been trying to communicate it to lay people. And it's an example of where, theists and non-theists have made predictions about what Earth's first life should look like, and this is actually testable. We could go to the moon and actually put these claims, these competing claims, to the test.
Why didn't they do that the first time they went, you think?
Well, the first mission was really focused on trying to find the pristine lunar rocks. Because the whole goal was to try to discover what was the origin of the moon. And so they weren't interested in finding the Earth-transported soil. They wanted the lunar rocks. And we've learned a lot from that. I mean, for example, thanks to the Apollo program, we got a reasonably good idea how the moon formed and how that benefited life on planet Earth.
Okay. And my second question for you, Dr. Felipe, is dealing with your specialty in black holes. We talked about it a little bit prior to the show, but are these things an actual, because there's a debate back and forth between whether or not it's an actual thing that can be pinpointed or not. What have you found in your research that are there any close to us? Like, are we in any danger of at some point getting spaghettified?
No, and we're not in danger. It's very, very unlikely that we have a close by black hole. We would see the effects, the gravitational effects on the solar system for sure. If you can have some one that is close to us as to produce any damage or something like that. So no, don't you can sleep.
Would you be more concerned about a rogue black hole or a rogue neutron star? Which would be more likely?
Well, raw numbers.
Or magnetron, or a pulsar, or magnestar.
Magnetron.
Or magnestar is what they're called.
Magnetron's
a type of tube.
Transformer.
No, they're like, if I'm not mistaken, they're like pulsars, but they have a very huge magnetic field, right?
Magnetic field, yeah, magnetars. Yeah, I would say it's more likely a neutron star, but it's not.
And that would pretty much rip the crust off the Earth and send us all flying into space.
Don't worry, we're in a very boring place in the galaxy.
We're in the middle of nowhere. Well, you know what's funny? That goes to the fine-tuning thing that you mentioned before. That we are pretty insignificant in the big picture as far as the universe, and yet I think the creationist model, and I'm not using it as young Earth creation, but I mean just the God created everything model, that we are somehow in a special place. We have some kind of anthropic principle that we hold a special place, and we are able to observe the universe. And the only reason we observe the universe is because we're sentient beings, that the universe allows us basically to observe it. There's been a lot of discussions recently on fine-tuning, and if you guys want to address that a little bit, because you touched on it, but I wouldn't mind hearing both your thoughts on why you think the universe is fine-tuned in such a way that it had to come from a teleological source, because I think the constants are fine-tuned. I think, obviously, if they were any different, we probably wouldn't be here, so thus the anthropic principle. And if there was major differences in the constants early on, like especially during the inflation period, they would have huge effects now. We would see major differences in what we would be seeing as far as like the CMB and anisotropies, correct?
Yeah, I don't really see that being disputed by astronomers and physicists. I mean, there's a general consensus that we do see an enormous amount of fine-tuning evidence in the universe, and it's particularly targeted for human beings. The fine-tuning is much more dramatic to get the equivalent of human life than it is, say, to get bacterial life. And I've written books to the effect that it's particularly noticeable if you want a planet where billions of humans can live at one time with technology, where they can actually discuss some of the issues that we're talking about right now. And that would be a biblical perspective. That's one of God's goals. And, the fine-tuning universe seems to reveal that. And as you were referring to, it's not just fine-tuning to make our existence possible and our technology possible. It's fine-tuning so that we can observe the marvels of the universe. I don't think it's a coincidence that we happen to be at the best possible location where advanced life is even conceivable to observe the entire history of the universe. And we're at the best possible time. I mean, I think it was Charles Lineweaver in Australia who made the point that if we humans were here any earlier in cosmic history, we'd only be seeing part of the history of the universe. And if we're here any later, likewise, we'd only be seeing part. But also add, if we were at a different location in our Milky Way galaxy, or if our Milky Way galaxy were in a different kind of galactic cluster, then we wouldn't be able to see the entire history of the universe. So that kind of communicates to me there's someone beyond the universe who wanted us to be able to read the storybook of the universe.
Felipe, you want to address that? Your thoughts on the fine-tune and the fact that we are existing at this moment, and had we existed, a billion years earlier, things would have been quite a bit different, correct?
Yeah. But I just want to say that it's because we are here that we can say, oh, this is perfect, but we don't know. Maybe this is not as perfect as we think. And saying that it's fine-tuned is making an assertion that is based on basically nothing. We don't really know if it's perfect or not. It's just perfect for us in the sense that, okay, this is the Earth that we got, and okay, it seems perfect because we are here, but the surface of the Earth is covered 80% by water, and we cannot live in water. So the Earth is apparently not that fine-tuned for us in that regard.
But isn't the argument more the fine-tuning that the constants are what they are, and any other different, though things would have been a lot different for us?
Yeah, but we don't have any reason to believe, any real reason to believe that they could be any different, for example. We don't know that.
In several years, it's not, or in a couple million years, I believe it's not going to be that perfect, right? Because eventually the sun's going to swallow our space, where we are.
Yeah.
Isn't that
several
the timeline?
things can happen. Yeah, you can have, for example, the solar system going through a very dense part of the galaxy, and you can have many comets launch in our direction, and so on and so forth. You can have many things happening. A supernova going off close-ish that can the energy can destroy the atmosphere, for example.
That kind of relates to actually your other book, Improbable Planet, Hugh.
Well, we're on a collision course for the Andromeda Galaxy too, right? Aren't we on track to hit the Andromeda Galaxy?
Yeah,
we won't even notice it.
The time scale of that is
a good point. That what would really kill the fine-tuning argument as being a kudo for the Christian faith is that we could find things that were actually not fine-tuned, things that were counter to our possible thriving here on planet Earth. And, you made the point about how we live on a planet that's mostly surface water. Well, I find it interesting that the optimal amount of water coverage is 71%. And in fact, there's a book by a guy I once debated, Peter Ward. He's an atheist paleontologist. He wrote in his book that the continents are continuing to grow as a percentage of the coverage of the Earth. It's gone from 0% up to its present 29. That when it hits 30, that's really bad news for humanity. And if it was 28, which was not too long ago, that too would be bad news. Isn't it interesting that we happen to be on the planet at the one time where we got the optimal coverage of continents relative to the water? So I like what you're raising, is that if we can actually find significant anti-fine-tuning characteristics, that would be a big blow to the Christian faith. On the other hand, if we find that the more we learn about the universe and the Earth, the more fine-tuning evidence we're finding for the specific benefit of human beings, that would be a plus for the Christian faith. And so let's look at the track record. What's it been like for the past 50 years? What do we think it's going to be like in the next year? When I speak on this subject, I often say to the skeptics, if you're not convinced today, wait 1 month. Let's see what gets published in the scientific literature. Does this enhance the fine-tuning argument, or does it take it away? I think that's also a great way to test these multiverse hypotheses that try to explain away the fine-tuning. Okay, if you're saying it's all pure chance, I would anticipate that the more we learn, we're going to see the evidence for fine-tuning for our specific benefit will decline. But if it continues to rise, then that tells me that multiverse hypothesis really doesn't have any merit.
Or if the Earth was destroyed in a cataclysmic event by a neutron star and there was nobody left to even care, that would kind of disprove that hypothesis as well.
Exactly.
But at that point, nobody would be around to even say, hey, Hugh, you were wrong.
Well, those are a question related to that by a guest or by one of the viewers that were talking about Dr. Felipe's research with the supermassive black holes and how that would relate to the biblical point of view, because those can come out of nowhere at any time. So they didn't see what Steve sent me wasn't exactly a question, but they kind of wanted to see how that would relate to Dr. Felipe's research.
Well, the supermassive black holes are located in the center of most galaxies, and they are not. Well, we are not close to the center of the galaxy, so
they're not really rogue things, right?
Yeah. And the rogue black holes are the ones that are product of stellar evolution. When a star dies that is very massive, you can have a black hole in the center. But we are, as I said, in a very boring place, very underdense place in the galaxy. So it's very unlikely that we have any rogue black holes going around and affecting our solar system. So yeah, the black holes I study are like the ones in the centers of galaxies that have a very interesting impact in the evolution of these galaxies, because there are periods that they feed a lot of the gas from the galaxy and emit enormous amount of energy, and that can shape the galaxy. So that's what I study, but we are safe from that because we have a black hole in the center of our galaxy, a supermassive black hole, but it's also very, very boring because it's not almost not eating any material. So
basically for Felipe it is boring, and for Dr. Ross it is fine-tuned. That's where they
yeah. But on a similar note,
go ahead.
I was going to say, on a similar note, Robert Rowe asked this question to you, Hugh, so you can address it in what you were just about to say. He wants to know, what does the discovery of a supermassive black hole binary system mean for creationism in your point of view? You said you wrote a blog on it, or had addressed this before.
Yeah, and I was actually talking about not super. Oh yeah, I was. We talk about distant galaxies where you've got two supermassive black holes that merge together. And that would not be a pleasant place for life if you were to experience one of those merging events.
Actually, that's my main research interest, the binaries of supermassive.
What range would that have? I mean, what
you're writing. So thank you.
There you go. Some commonality here.
I've been looking at your research. Okay, it's very interesting. But also, if you look at the Earth's supermassive black hole, number one, it's relatively small compared to other galaxies that are about 1 trillion times the mass of the sun. So we have to have the benefit of living in a big galaxy with a small supermassive black hole. But the other thing we notice is the Earth's orbit above the center of our galaxy, very little wide z-axis movement. It moves very little up and down relative to the galactic plane. And that's actually a benefit for us human beings. Because if we were like normal stars, where we move up and down quite a bit relative to the galactic plane, that would expose us to the deadly radiation from the supermassive black hole. But because our star has such a very low up and down movement, we remain well protected. And so, that's one of the more recently discovered fine-tuning aspects of our star.
Is that due to like intergalactic gases that are preventing the
in the plane of the galaxy, you've got a lot of gas and dust, and that acts as a shield from that deadly radiation. But if you were to move up and down relative to that shield, you would get exposed. And
space is so fascinating. I mean, it just blows your mind to think about all the little things that go on up there. Like one thing that I can't wrap my mind around is, where does it end? Like, where does space stop?
Well, if you wait long enough, it'll get bigger.
Well, I mean, it goes to the question. We only have the observable universe that we have. Then above that, there's large. The universe is much bigger than our observable universe. But do we have any idea of how far that extends? I mean, and obviously, I don't think there's a brick wall at the end. I think there's obviously, it's some kind of circular nature, or you kind of back where you started, maybe. But what happens when you pass that 92, 93 billion light years away, or whatever it is? Is it 48 billion or 92? I've heard both. I guess one's a radius, one's a diameter. But what happens when you go beyond that? I mean, when the space-time is actually still being created, what happens at that part of the region that we will never be able to get to? It's forever outside of our observation.
That limit, you got to wait for the universe to get bigger.
You got to wait. What would that be imagining like the universe being created in front of you?
It's got that's like if I were in you two, the field that you two are in, it would just drive me crazy. Like I would have so many questions that you can't get the answer to immediately, which I'm impatient anyway. So not being able to know like where that, I mean, does it end? Can it end? And the numbers that you were saying, Steve, I mean, there's got to be just a guess. But what are they guessing it on? Like, how do you just? Well,
they're not a guess. The observable event horizon is pretty well known, but it is a huge number. It's like 96 billion or something like that. But what you want to know bigger numbers when they're talking about supermassive black holes. How many trillions and trillions and trillions of stars equivalent, like the sun, is in some of these major massive super black holes? The amount of mass in there is nobody can comprehend, I don't think, those numbers. What would be an estimate on some of those?
They're not that massive if you compare them, for example, with the galaxy that are
but in one little space.
That's the thing. You have a lot of mass compressed in one space. For example, the one in our galaxy is 4 million solar masses, so it's like 4 million suns compressed into a very small radius. It's 3 million kilometers.
Yeah, that's almost like nothing. I mean,
that's
crazy.
And but if you compare them with the mass of the galaxy, it's nothing. It's orders
sure,
of
but the amount of mass in one specific location. I mean, even the sun to be a black hole, I mean, it have to be reduced down to like 3 kilometers, right? I mean, that's a lot of matter in a very small amount of space.
Yeah.
Well, Felipe, since you're an expert on this, what's the upper limit for these supermassive black holes? I mean, I've heard 10 to 15 billion times the mass of the sun. Or are they actually thinking there might be bigger ones than that in the distant galaxies?
Do you mean there is like an actual physical upper limit to the mass of black holes?
Observationally, I mean, what's the biggest one that you're aware of?
Oh, 10 to the 9.
10 to the 9. Okay, yeah.
I always forget the word for that. 10 to the 9 is 1 giga.
Yeah, I've heard 10.
What defines that upper boundary?
There's no physical, not that I'm aware of. There's no physical upper limit, but the ones that we observed that are very massive must have been accreting, so eating a lot of material constantly since the moment that they formed, because we have been observing very far away, so very early in the universe, very massive black holes, so 10 to the 9, close to 10 to the 10 solar masses. And that poses actually, that poses actually a challenge for the models that we have today, because you need them to be accreting like crazy, like eating a lot of gas all the time from the moment that they formed. So yeah, I think the most massive is probably close to 10 to the 10.
Do they always stay that like the same size, or do they ever like die out?
Well, yeah, basically in the time scales that we study, they stay the same if they are not accreting any mass. So of course you have this Hawking radiation, and they lose some of them, but that's very, very slow. So,
but a micro black hole, Hawking radiation would actually evaporate pretty quickly, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Do you guys think it's inconceivable that we could actually be living in some kind of black hole? I mean, as far as we have a event horizon, an observable event horizon, is it that far stretched to say we are in a type of black hole?
Well, if you're looking at the movie Interstellar, maybe, but other than that,
good movie.
It was great until the Tesseract. I was done at that point. I was like, I'm not going there.
I was impressed with that.
No, I mean, I got it, right? I mean, I did. I thought it was very ingenious, and I thought it was very well studied, well researched, but it was just my reality was only suspended so far.
Right.
I have a question for Dr. Ross. Dr. Ross, it says to ask you what you think of Seventh-day Adventists. They believe that there's life on other worlds and only begins on Earth, fell to sin by the serpent. And only beings on Earth fell to sin by the serpent. Sorry about that. So what do you think about Seventh-day Adventists and their saying that life exists on other planets and only the beings on this planet fell for the serpent in the original sin story?
Yeah, it's not just Seventh-day Adventists within the Christian community that hold that view. That's been a predominant view, well, not predominant, but it's been a common view for at least the past 2,000 years. And as I mentioned earlier, that's certainly permitted within the Bible. Basically, the debate goes on, okay, are we talking about a God that conserves his miracles, which I mean by that is he only performs the miracles that are necessary to achieve his end goals? Or are we talking about a God who's a compulsive creator? He enjoys creating so much that he's not going to just stop at one experiment here on planet Earth. And so, what the Seventh-day Adventists are talking about is that kind of a God that really enjoys creating. And they draw their theology, and I've spoken to Seventh-day Adventist universities. They basically say, look at the earth. There's life everywhere, has great diversity. And therefore, this talks about a God who's extravagant about his creation, and therefore we should anticipate that we're going to find lots of planets with life on it created by the creator God of the Bible. But I can tell you, having looked at these extrasolar planets, we've yet to find any candidates. So what we see observationally is it looks like we're not finding these millions and billions of planets where life could exist. We haven't looked everywhere, so the possibility is still out there. But so far, it seems to be going in the direction of the theological perspective that God doesn't waste his miracles. He conserves his miracles. But we'll wait and see. It's still an open question.
Well, let me ask this. Both you gentlemen have had vast experience in astrophysics, and both of you have looked at the same data. This is one of those cases where, people you have that old trope, well, we have the same data, but we look at it differently. I don't think so. I think both of you probably do look at the same data, and you both come to similar conclusions. Can I ask why one particular astrophysicist would somehow come to the conclusion that all of this led to a deity, and that the other one led to the conclusion that didn't require a deity or there is no deity?
Felipe?
Felipe, go ahead and go first on that.
I haven't arrived to that conclusion. I'm an agnostic atheist. I don't believe in God, but I don't know if God exists or not. I haven't come to any conclusion regarding that.
Okay, but it has not led you to the conclusion there's a theist.
No.
Okay, so let's take it from that approach. In one case, it's led to a conclusion there's a God, and the other person has not come to that conclusion.
Exactly.
Okay, and what would you think what would you need to look at as far as the science to go, maybe I can conclude that God was not just a possibility. I think everybody would agree that there's a possibility, but what would you need to agree that God probably was, or a deity of some kind, which probably was required in order to create this process and create the universe? Is there anything that could ever be done scientifically for you?
That's a very difficult question to answer. I think, of course, I'm an atheist until I'm proven that God exists. I don't think that's going to happen. But of course, if someone presents me with a model that can make predictions and that it's based on evidence, I can say, okay, then God exists. But I wouldn't know what kind of model that could be in order to.
Okay, Dr. Ross, how about you? And especially, what would disconfirm it for you in your case? Well, that's probably a better way to look at it. You've already come to the conclusion that somehow a deity is a necessity and instrumental in bringing about the universe. But would anything in science just confirm that to you?
Well, yeah, I've already alluded to that. If you could prove to me beyond any shadow of doubt that the universe didn't have a beginning, that it's existed as it is for eternity, that would be quite catastrophic to the Christian faith. Likewise, if you could show that we human beings are not exceptional in any way with respect to all other life on planet Earth, that would be catastrophic to the Christian faith. If you could show me that Jesus of Nazareth really didn't rise bodily from the dead, that would be catastrophic to the Christian faith. And I kind of go along with Felipe. You want to adopt a worldview perspective that's got predictive power. And so, Felipe, I mean, I like what you said, that, if there were things from a Christian perspective that would predict the events in the future that proved to be correct, I'm glad that you would say that would cause you to consider the possibility that maybe the Christian faith indeed is correct. Now, I've already suggested one. We could go to the moon and see who got the origin of life model right, the theist or the non-theist. So that's something we haven't tested yet that could be done. I think fine-tuning is a powerful tool. If we can show that the fine-tuning evidence from a biblical perspective is getting weaker and weaker as we learn more and more, that would be very corrosive to my Christian faith. Maybe not catastrophic, but certainly corrosive. On the other hand, if we demonstrate that it's going the other way around, that the more we learn about the universe, the stronger and more compelling the fine-tuning argument becomes from a Christian perspective, I would hope that would motivate people like Felipe to say, you know what, I need to really think hard about the fact that maybe I've been wrong about my atheistic worldview perspective. And I would take that one step farther and make the point that when you look at the different religions of the world, they all make different predictions about what we scientists should expect to find as we continue to explore the universe. I mean, the Hindu model of the universe is very different than the Christian model. The Mormon model, you were talking earlier about the supermassive black hole. I mean, the foundation of Mormonism is that life first begins in the center of our Milky Way galaxy. So I think they got a problem with Felipe's research. But if we were to prove that there's no big deal about life existing at the center of our galaxy, then that would be a kudo for the Mormon faith. But I don't think it's looking good for Mormonism.
I think, though,
I gotta say it's refreshing. Let me just say this real quick, Steve.
Yeah,
You can ask. It's not a question; it's a comment. Dr. Ross, I gotta say, it's refreshing to hear somebody say, when asked the question, "What could change your mind?" and you actually give reasons, because you're used to hearing nothing will be able to change my mind, and I just think that that's a dishonest answer. So it's refreshing to hear someone from your worldview actually be able to say that there are things that could prove that incorrect. So
that's actually a biblical principle. The Apostle Paul had stated that in Corinthians, that if we were to prove that the resurrection of Jesus Christ didn't happen, then we who are Christians are to be pitied amongst all humans because we believed a lie. So, I mean, it's right there in Scripture that we need to base our faith on tangible evidence.
very nice.
Yeah, and I concur with Kyle and I as well. I've always said one of my favorite guests is Dr. Ross because of that very reason. He doesn't, I think, at all try to equivocate. He doesn't try to straw man. He tries to answer directly. People can agree with him or not agree with him. That's fine. That's what we're here for. But I've always found you to be a very honest interlocutor, and I respect that immensely because obviously you're going to have your positions, and when you're challenged on them, you don't shrink away from it. So I want to emphasize what Kyle just said, and I appreciate that as well. We are kind of drawing this to a close. We were allowed at 90 minutes, so we're coming up on that mark real quick. So do you guys want to
past 90 minutes?
What's that? Yeah, I know. My goodness, it went by
Past
quick.
90 minutes.
This is like, when we have discussions like this, it seems like we just started. Then I'm looking at the time. I'm like, where to go? Because these are my favorite types of discussions by far.
Absolutely.
So, do you guys want to have like a 5 minutes kind of back and forth about what maybe Felipe you want to talk to Dr. Ross and ask him questions, and then we can kind of wrap it up from there?
No, I was thinking actually about the fossils in the moon because that sounds pretty weird for me, let's say, because I find very unlikely that something can survive. How can you take like something from the Earth and take it to the moon without destroying it? Think about it like this: if a meteorite comes to Earth, then the contact with the atmosphere basically destroys everything that is on the surface.
Well,
how can you bring something from the Earth to the moon, keep it intact? That I find that very unlikely.
Yeah, you'll find articles on this on my reasons.org website. I've also cited it in the book Improbable Planet, and you'll see the citations to the literature. And basically, it's people pointing out that, number one, our planet was being bombarded much more heavily by meteoroids when life was first here on planet Earth than it is today. So you're actually going to get the greatest transport volume between 3.5 and 3.8 billion years ago. And there's a paper published making the point that the initial transport at 3.8 billion years ago, which is the date we have for the origin of life on planet Earth, that's where you're going to get meteoroids taking Earth's soil to the moon, and they're actually able to demonstrate it's going to land on the moon with low velocity collisions. And so making the point that we've got a high expectation that these fossils of Earth's first life would not be damaged because of the low velocity impacts on the moon. And there's also quite a bit of it. And so it's not going to be easy to find those Earth's fossils, but it's doable with current technology. And actually, I find that the Chinese Space Agency is quite interested in going to the moon. And they seem interested in actually solving this problem. So we may not get the credit, but the Chinese might, and actually find this stuff. And the latest paper I've seen published on this made the point that we shouldn't expect an even distribution, that there are places on the moon that may get as much as 10 times more delivery of Earth material than other places. And so there's actually better places. So instead of finding 20,000 kilograms per 100 square miles or square kilometers, there may actually be places where you find 200,000, which ups the probability that you're actually going to be able to recover these microbes. And just 1 ton of Earth's soil has 100 quadrillion microbes in it. So, I mean, I actually look at this as something that's quite feasible. We could go there, and certainly we're never going to find it here on the Earth. The best we're going to be able to do here on the Earth is find the isotopes of Earth's first fossils. But the very fact that we could actually find intact fossils on the moon, I find quite intriguing. I don't think Mars is a good candidate because we're not looking at low velocity collisions, and Mars has got an atmosphere, and so that's going to do some damage. And of course, you're looking at a transport rate that's a factor of 100 times less.
So the transfer, would that happen when the Earth was hit and the debris from the impact
exactly
shooting back?
If you get a big enough meteoroid hitting the Earth, it'll cause at least some Earth soil to escape the Earth's gravity, and that soil gets distributed throughout the solar system. I mean, for example, I think you're going to find the fossils of Earth's first life on the moons of Jupiter and Saturn, but at a far lower level of abundance than on Mars.
Would a naturalistic model be able to account for that, Felipe? If that was the case, do you think?
What do you mean? Like
if they found fossils on other planets, like it would have to be like, I guess originally 4 billion years ago, something around that ballpark, 3.8 billion years ago. What kind of fossils are we looking at? I mean, the moon. The moon was made 4 billion years ago, right? Something in that ballpark.
Yeah.
What life did even exist back then, for the most part? I mean, this had to have been at the very, very beginning of early life.
Well, Steve, I can answer the question. The non-theistic model would say, yes, there will be fossils that we'll find on the moon. We're only going to find one species of microbe, not a whole bunch. And we're going to find very tiny ones, and they're not going to be abundant. Whereas a Christian model would predict that you're going to have an entire ecology of microbes. And we're not just going to find microbes that are 1/10 of a micron across, but microbes that span the spectrum from 1/10 to, say, 2 or 3 microns across. And we're going to see several different metabolic pathways being represented, not just one. And so that's quite doable, to go to the moon and see which model is correct.
That is fascinating. Felipe, do you think that's possible?
Still trying to wrap my head around it, because I still I still not really convinced that you can have a process that can bring something to the moon from the Earth that already has its atmosphere and life on it. But yeah,
we can find out.
And especially intact. I mean, I agree. I'm on Felipe's boat on this. I have a hard time wrapping my head around a catastrophic event that would do active transport from the Earth to another celestial body where you would still have these fossils still in any kind of intact, whatever. If they're bacteria, I don't know how they would remain intact. Now, I would be fascinated to if we went to the moon and we decided to do more study and found old type. I don't know what would it be before cyanobacteria even. It would be.
I want it to be true.
I don't know what the hell these would be. They would be so prebiotic even. But it would be fascinating if they left some kind of fossil.
I'm jumping on YouTube right after this to find out more.
No, I mean, I've heard of this
every
before.
Every time you hear something like this, I had never heard that before. That's the first time I've ever heard of anything like that. But I can see that it may be possible because of like the early impacts, I guess. I don't know. I'm gonna leave my mind open.
Later impacts.
It is something we can find out. We can know. All we gotta do is go back to the moon and.
Well, I'm thinking more.
If
Mars,
we did go to the moon,
impact.
all you conspiracy theories out there.
Yeah,
but,
yeah. First we have to actually get to space because we've never been there before.
Actually, hey, here's a good question.
Can we ask about flat Earth real quick
you
before we
both
go?
study the Earth. Is the Earth flat or round?
Yeah, just do it.
Of course it's flat.
Both your expertise opinions as expert astrophysicists.
They're going to cut that.
They're
going to cut that.
Oh, I kind of suspect, but go ahead.
He said it's flat. He confirmed it is flat.
It is flat. We've been paid to keep the truth to ourselves.
Probably not very much, I would assume, right?
I hope
called a shield by an astrophysicist.
You're going to get quoted, Felipe.
Yeah.
I know. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. Please don't quote me on that. I don't want to lose my job.
It's really sad that is actually in 2018 that they're flat earthers. I thought we'd have like having flying cars by this point in life, in our time frame. But no, we have people that have gone back to flat Earth. I mean, we're going backwards. I think
it's not shrinking or staying the same. It's growing. Like that is
I know. It literally. I'm surprised at that as well. Flat Earth movement is growing. No matter what we do, we're trying to stem the tide. We're putting our finger in the dam. It don't matter.
No.
I think that's for one side fascinating, and from the other side very worrying. That this kind of
absolutely.
It's fascinating. It really is. The mind, just the psychology of flat earthers is interesting.
Yeah.
But do either of you have a theory on why that is a growing trend? And I guess let me ask Dr. Ross first. They all seem to have it stemmed, or it'll go back to a origins in the Bible. Like they have some. It's all religious tied for them. Most of them, I would say. Wouldn't you say, Steve? 90% of them have it rooted in a religious aspect. Like, why do you think that is, and where are they getting that? Where's that connection coming from? And does the Bible teach about a flat Earth?
Well, it's interesting because that's the question I answered yesterday on my Facebook page. You'll see the article there. Does the Bible really teach a flat Earth? And I bring up all the biblical texts that flat earthers refer to. And really make the point that actually, if you look at it in context, it sustains a spherical Earth. The Bible doesn't teach a flat Earth. It teaches that the Earth is spherical. And also recognizing, of course, because ancients living 2,000-3,000 years ago, they knew the Earth was spherical. You don't need modern technology to figure out that the Earth is spherical. And so I pointed out how in 700 BC, you had people writing about the fact that the constellations look different as you go to different parts of the Earth. You see different constellations and their orientation changes. I mean, what I tell my flat Earth friends, get on an airplane and go from Cairo to Johannesburg, or go from Los Angeles to Sydney. And it was really fun. Look out the window at night, and you can actually watch the constellations slowly turn upside down. I mean, that can only happen if the Earth is spherical. And maybe it's a symptom of the fact that in the 21st century, most people live in large cities where they never look up at the sky. Or if they're like people living in Shanghai, it doesn't matter. If you look up at the night sky, you're not going to see anything anyway.
Yeah. Dr. Felipe, what's your hypothesis on why this is a thing? Why is this a thing?
Why is this a thing? It's part of the social behavior of of human beings that try to feel part of a group, of being special, and that combined with scientific illiteracy is that But something that is baffling for me is that flat Earth is something that is so easily debunked, something that any one of us can go outside and make an experiment that for sure proves that the Earth is round. You can be like a stationary universe kind of guy, because that's more difficult to like in
you can make arguments for geocentrism if using math if you wanted to, but not flat Earth.
Almost everything. But yeah, flat Earth is just ridiculous. I mean, you can disprove it with how can you explain day and night? I mean, it's something as simple as.
You really want to know how they explain it? You're gonna love this.
They have explanations for everything.
Yeah, it's called the
Pac-Man. They have an explanation for everything.
It's Pac-Man theory. The sun actually goes over here, then it goes wonka 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 wonka, and goes back around the other side. That's the Pac-Man theory.
Well, congratulations, Dr. Felipe and Dr.
slow?
Ross. Since you,
Yeah, it goes like, well, just like imagine it goes wonka 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 wonka. You know, in Pac-Man, you go one side of the screen, you come in the other. That's what they suggest. The sun goes off one end, it goes wonka 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 wonka. It comes back on the other side.
Then how can they explain there is day in one side of the earth and night?
Don't try wrapping your head around it too much.
Yeah. We don't ask those questions.
Yeah,
it's just like you don't ask
those questions.
You don't ask about going to the edge either. You don't ask about going to the edge. That's off limits. But congratulations, guys. You're both now on the shield list. So welcome. Before we close out, Dr. Ross, I just want to follow up on that. How much hate comments did you get on your article yesterday from the Flat Earth group? Because they are vicious when you come out when you say that the Earth is not flat. They come at you vicious. Or in our experience, they come at us pretty hardcore.
Well, I haven't checked. I mean, the first 12 hours, everything was positive. But I haven't checked it this morning, so I expect there's going to be some negative stuff I'm going to have to respond to.
Don't even check it. Don't even check it. Don't expose yourself to that. But
once you look at that abyss, the abyss looks back at you, and you're changed forever.
That was an amazing conversation. I mean, that was probably one of my favorite things that we've done. I find that we could have done this for hours, and the whole subject, I think, is fascinating, and you both very respectful, very knowledgeable. It was a great conversation, so I deeply want to thank both of you for coming on and having this discussion with us today.
You're welcome.
Well, thank you, guys.
So, Steve, you want to close us out?
Yeah, just let people know there will be an after show. It's going to be on my channel. If you haven't subscribed to me, it's Steve McRae. I think Felipe said he was going to join us for a little while. Dr. Ross, I don't know if you can, but I'll arrange that with you after this is over if you can or cannot. I know that you're a busy person. But we're going to be discussing about black holes and kind of getting a little more technical stuff of black holes, stuff that I really kind of find interesting. But it won't be very long. Kyle has I think he has some kind of, I don't know if it's a debate or discussion, what do you want to call it, with SJ and...
Let's go with debate. I feel good today.
Oh, I love that. Okay. So he's going to have a debate on the Geek Room tonight at 3 Eastern, and it's going to be on recreational marijuana use, I believe.
And medical, I believe.
And medical, and with SJ and RM Huffman. So, who's a younger generation.
Dr. Huffman is back.
Dr. Huffman is back. So don't forget to subscribe to the Geek Room. Don't forget to check out Dr. Ross's book, which, again, I have a copy of. I'm still working my way through it. I've kind of like had to do the old, but it's well cited, I got to tell you. And if you haven't read
Only if you're 18 and up, though, by the way, I just wanted to point that out, Steve. Only if you're 18 and up can you watch the marijuana debate, because somebody flagged it on our channel.
Age restricted,
and YouTube decided that you only had to be 18, even though there wasn't anything but facts, statistics, and numbers in it. You can't handle that if you're 17. So I'm sorry. Get the highlights from your 18-year-old friends, but blame YouTube.
Yeah, it actually got flagged age restricted, but I just want to throw it out there again. Dr. Ross, it's really good seeing you again. I did enjoy your book, Improbable Planet. I do recommend that book. Even if you're a Christian, non-Christian, theist, it doesn't matter. I thought that science on it was very good from my humble layperson, perspective. I enjoyed reading it. So
well, thank you.
Dr. Felipe, so glad you reached out. We are going to bring you back on for a black hole discussion later on this month too, so we can kind of focus in on that and find out all the scary, frightening spaghetti things that black holes do. All right, guys, we'll see you this afternoon and on Steve's channel for the post show.
Link is in the video description and in the live chat. We'll be starting that actually sooner than we thought, maybe in about